pick your voice choice. Like, you have a choice.
I'm not sugarcoating it. It's hard. You have to find your balance to it.
Committed to learning your why and then protecting that.
It's how you do one thing is how you do everything.
Make sure you communicate what you're doing and why you're doing it and get that buy-in. And so
you want to take the call?
Dance assistant, how can I help you?
A day where you're his assistant and you're hers.
That would be fun.
Can we do that?
Conversion rates would go like this for both of our businesses. I guarantee it.
Guys, I'm so excited. Like, I've done content for over a decade, and this is probably the single most show that I'm in, like, hyped up to do. If you guys are listening in, like, this is an amazing group of people that flew to Seattle to give back to our industry. Like, the good news is, like, you're not going to be sold coaching. There's no event to go to after this. There's no RE Source Plus or Mortgage Coach Plus. This is high level individuals that took their time to give back to the industry. That's why I'm excited, and I'm humbled that you guys would come do this. So thanks for being here, guys. It's just going to be an amazing time. And I asked the RE Source community, like, how can I leverage, like, this amazing group of people? And there were a lot of questions that were fired out, but I'm going to go right into the meat and potatoes. So nobody clicks out. This is going to be a long form. Get ready, get your headphones, get your long drive ready, and get right into it. So it's tough when somebody watches content and, like, looks at Denise or Dan or even, like, tech builders like you and Dave. Like, they just look at you guys at such a different level. And more often than not, they're like, man, I just can't relate to these guys. Like, they're so far ahead of me. And unfortunately, sometimes they like, it falls on deaf ears, like the words of wisdom that you guys share, because they just feel so disconnected. So my first question, I want to go around and have everybody kind of share. If we hit the reset button today and we went back in time to when, like, Dave was starting Mortgage Coach, and you have all the wisdom that you have, all the obstacles that you guys have overcome, what would you go back and tell young Dave or young Denise or young Deborah? Like, what would you go back and tell that person? I'm going to start with Dave, because Dave, amazing success. A lot of news that's going to come out pretty soon here. But what would you go back and tell young Dave?
Wow. I mean, there's a lot of things that I would tell young Dave, but I always had a love and curiosity for people. So making friends, being a friend was something that was always natural. But the people that you pick matter, you know, and the people that you surround yourself matter, and lift them up, make the best of them. You know, there's been people that are good people that sometimes weren't a fit, you know, they weren't in the right seat of the bus, and over the years. And I would just say, like, you know, really be careful with who you bring into your team. And then when you have a great team, they're your best resource. And that goes for not only the internal team. You know, I think, you know, most people listen to this, you're either you're a loan officer or you're a realtor. And I was doing some planning for this year, and I went and checked out the stats of how many teams were doing over 300 loans last year, 2020. And there were a little over 3,000, which, by the way, is a big number compared to 2019 and 2018. I mean, a massive increase in 2020. But here's the deal. Guess what the number is in 2021? It's almost 7,000.
Wow.
It's over 6,000. So there was a 74% increase in teams. And so that's, you know, that's something that I would have learned, like, build a team. And for all you individual, whether it's a realtor or a loan officer, you have a team. You know, there's people that are on your team right now. So people matter, teams matter, relationships matter.
I was talking to Denise about that earlier, about there's no blueprint to build your teams. I mean, you guys know, because you're mega producers, big teams, you probably struggled along the way to build that team, I'm guessing, right?
Oh, epic failures. You know, because you don't know. It's so hard, because it's like, when do you hire that first person? And then what do you pay them? And there's not a blueprint for it. How do you leverage it? Yeah. And so, like, I started out with the complete wrong comp plan for my first 2 people. And luckily they're still with me today, but having to have that conversation a few years later as your volume grows and as the team manufacturing process changes and technology changes, so did how I thought they were supposed to get paid, So anyways, that is tough. There isn't a blueprint. We need to do like another one of these of, if you're a new loan officer, how do you start out? When do you hire? What do you pay them? What's kind of the average? So stay tuned.
There's not a lot of content out there or blueprints to build and scale a business or a team. You guys built like actual businesses, but scaling a successful team is so difficult. How do you pay them? How do you leverage them? I'm going to take his answer away. So he said teams. I think we all agree like that's difficult to build a team from scratch. We make a lot of errors along the way. So we could go back to our young selves. That's a great one, Dave. So I'm going to take that answer away from you. What would you say to young Denise?
It sounds cliche, but you learn so much more from the failures than the successes. And so a lot of people associate me with social media or video. And if you look at my very first YouTube video that I posted, I think it was 8 years ago. It might be close to 9 years ago. I mean, it is so bad. The lighting's bad. My sister's holding the camera. It looks like the Blair Witch Project.
I'm laughing like trying
The
to.
Blair Witch.
It does. It is so bad.
It was like
It's
100
so
take,
bad.
100 take. And I have to hide my face because when I would laugh, she would laugh. So I'm
Yeah.
like,
So I'd get 2 minutes in and I start laughing, but literally I have a whiteboard and I have taped on the whiteboard a HUD statement. And I was explaining how to read and understand a HUD statement. It is taped to the whiteboard. And I think my phone number was on the top and my phone number was wrong. Anyways, I'm just saying.
you had the domain and you spelled Donoghue wrong. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
the DonoghueTeam.com and you
I
spelled
was
it wrong.
super nervous. I was so nervous, but that video is still there today. Obviously, I've done a lot of videos, since then. But when I first met Dan, Dan's my mentor. He's my idol. I first met him at Sales Mastery and he was doing social media.
Crazy.
And I was like, man, I feel like I could do that. I want to touch more people than I can just picking up the phone and having a power hour. I could maybe only talk to 10 people in an hour. But to do what Dan was doing and get my message out there and being able to reach, one more additional person in that power hour, so much more. So, but I would look at what people were doing and I just thought, man, I don't have the lights and I don't have the cameras and I don't have the production and I'm not anywhere close to that.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is even my very first YouTube videos I have on my channel today, which is, I don't know if this is pathetic or good, but it's still like one of the most watched videos. They don't care what you look like or how necessarily good your production is, as you get better internally by doing. And so even if it's not
Repetition, reps.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Taking
And
at bats.
that's with videos, that's with understanding loan guidelines, that's with building a team, that's with whatever it is. It's like, enjoy the journey, because you're not going to get to chapter 10 by hitting the fast forward button. Like, there is a reason for the journey. If you skip it, you won't even appreciate it here. But I got my shins bruised and I fell on my face multiple times. I'd never written a purchase loan in my life in 2012, and it was an epic failure. But I learned from all of it. So I know that sounds cliche, but enjoy the failures, enjoy the journey, because you're not going to get to the Dan Keller status if all you focus on is how do I be like Dan. Dan didn't do that overnight, So understand that there is a journey and respect the journey, appreciate the journey, and lean into it.
I guess that's why I start with that question, because Deborah was saying this earlier in the green room. Like, a lot of people look at you guys and compare themselves. What'd you say they're on chapter 2 and they're on chapter 30.
Right. They kept comparing their chapter 2 to Dan or Denise's chapter 30. And
Unfair. You can't.
Right.
Well, I think you have to say, I would say done is better than perfect, right? Because in the end, you just said it, I took action, right? Your video wasn't great, but it was action. And, Dan, you talked about it last night at dinner. You talked about your first video and how it wasn't like, it's just funny now that you look at it. And I find that that's where, when I was a new loan officer, I struggled. I was really pushing myself to be perfect. And I have a drawer and I keep it full to remind me behind my desk of all my projects that are, 80, 90% done that would have made a big impact on my business. I had just implemented them at that point and I wanted to be just right. And I just find so many people invest time and energy, right? You're listening to this. There's going to be pages of ideas. I already got 2 ideas of things I want to execute on. And so you have to take action and just get it done and then get it going and be okay with the fact that you spelled your website wrong, or maybe just don't do that. But But ultimately, in the end,
By the way.
yeah, that's it.
Listen,
And-
that Donoghue, if anybody spells it right at this table, bonus points.
Funny story, mortgage coach startup story. Our first booth, when you're starting a company, your first booth, your first, backdrop of the booth. And the first quote from Mortgage Coach was intelligent presentations for loan officers. And so, we paid $5,000 to be at this event. We paid $1,000 for this backdrop to be printed. And he kind of comes up to me about halfway through the day and he's like, hey. And he goes, intelligence spelled wrong.
Oh, God, of all words.
and I look at my partner, Greg Wexler, and I'm like, it's your
Who was
fault.
the intelligent one that spelled that on the banner?
Just do it.
Fair enough. I
Just
still
do
can't
it.
spell it, so.
Right.
Done is better than perfect.
Right. And by the way,
Not
we
in
launched,
that
we sold a lot of product. We killed it.
Luckily, the rest of loan officers can't spell, so they didn't
I
catch
was
it.
just about to say,
Yeah.
we're
That-
numbers people, not spellers. So
That was
I
a
But
wouldn't even have
intelligence,
noticed.
but you don't want to misspell
Yeah,
intelligence.
that's
No,
kinda-
that was strategy. That was
Yeah,
that
yeah.
was to create
Okay.
It was
Conversation
around back
starter.
then.
That's
and it did. And a story 20 years later.
Yeah.
That's
That's
funny.
good.
So what would you say, Dan?
To my younger self,
Yeah.
oh man, I would say having been in the athletic arena like you have, when you win that championship or you have those career achievements, they're almost anticlimactic, right? It's more of looking back and going, man, that was funny. My first video that I did and I butchered it. I got done with it and there's 2 bottles of Bud Light behind me, Coors Light behind me, right? Or all the phone calls that we made to real estate agents that we got hung up on, or builders. And so I think appreciate the process, be where your feet are. I think that's the number one thing I would go back 15 years to me and just say, hey, love every moment of this. Like with your kids, love every moment of them being 2 and crying and getting into stuff, Denise.
Oh man.
Right? 'Cause you got youngsters,
I've got
right?
a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Not loving it, but no, I do.
Yeah, love it because you look back on it and
Yeah.
laugh and
Yeah.
appreciate it and love it. So I would say be where your feet are. Fall in love with the process a little bit more, and enjoy the process. I think that's one of the things about my career. I've really enjoyed the process, like being able to look back every year and say, "Oh my God, I met Dave Savage in 2013." I finally got on one of his coaching calls that I'd watched for 4 years prior, right? And this is my big moment. And to meet Tom Ferry and the Todd Duncans and the Rick Rubies and the Ryans and the Todds, all you guys, Denise and the nerd, So I think a lot of that is really important. The other thing too, everyone wants success. And I tell my loan officers this because they see our paychecks, they see our volume, but everyone's not ready for success. You're not ready to be a millionaire. I've told my young loan officer right now, I said, you're not ready, man. You don't know how to build a team. You don't know how to manage a team. You don't know how to build a culture. You're not ready for that success yet.
When you say that, because I feel like you're right, probably more often than not. But how do they take that? Are they able to hear that?
Yeah, he's got a great level head. But you go back to athletics. You're not ready to play in the big game yet.
Right.
Yeah.
You got to put in the work in the minor leagues, and you got to put up the numbers. So I would lean back on that you don't have to have it overnight, and it's not going to happen overnight. And if it happens overnight, I don't think it's as fulfilling as a 10 to 12 to 15 year journey.
It's like Blake Griffin saying, he's like, you got to fall in love with the process of becoming great.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be great. Nobody wants to fall in love with the process of becoming great.
Of doing what it takes
Yes.
to be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Dan, you mentioned something about realtors and getting after it. And that is the difference between, top producers in a purchase market, which we are officially in, is that they do love building relationships with realtors. They make the calls, they have the conversations. Any advice you have to any either new loan officers listening in or people that are struggling and talking to realtors and getting purchase business they're not doing
It's
it.
going to be front and center
Yeah.
forward, right?
But I have a funny feeling mindset wise, if you were to ask Denise this when I'm finished, we believe that if you are a real estate agent, Todd, and you don't work with me, that I'm providing you a disservice because my team is so good. And our process is so good and I care so much. I use the technology. I have the background, the financial literacy background to provide so much value to your clients. So if we're not working together, I'm screwing you over. Like when I make a cold call, when I talk to a realtor, a listing agent, that's my mindset. Like I'm so convinced that if we don't work together, I'm providing a disservice
Everybody
to
has
you.
to pause and go back and hit the rewind button twice to listen to that.
Mhm.
That's.
But I
amazing.
bet you feel the same way
Yes.
when you're talking like, gosh darn it, you got to see this.
So
Yeah.
my question for you, or for you who's listening, is do you have that world-class process and experience, and can you actually have that confidence that you guys are talking about, having to go out there and then realize you're probably not that far from it, but you have to take the time to figure out what's missing. There's so much great content out there, right? RE-Source has great stuff, right? Mortgage Coach, right? We built out a lot of good content there. The industry's given so much. And then I'd also say for the real estate agents listening, right? Hey, are you in that best relationship? And, maybe it's someone who's a great friend who's been really loyal for you. How can you sharpen them to help them have that experience? Or maybe you need to go out there and find someone else who's got that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the number one thing is if you're a loan officer listening, it's like, do you have that same conviction and confidence because you truly believe that a loan experience with your team is unlike any other experience. If you can't 100% answer that today, that's what you've got to spend. It's January 2022. Like you gotta fix that first, because if you have that, then it's a game changer. I mean, I had a real estate agent call me a couple of days ago, and he was getting $4,000 a month from his current lender. And I was not going to pay him $4,000 a month for business, but he was asking me, what value do you bring? Because I have to figure out and justify, why am I going to change relationships? Because we're talking $4,000 a month. And I started kind of doing the whole Todd Duncan approach of monetizing. Well, let's talk through that. And what I'll fast forward to the end of it, was you might have been given a $4,000 check, but what the net was, it was actually negative, because the client experience was so bad that's why you're calling. I didn't call you, you're calling me. And we had to walk through a psychological conversation to get to that point, because I wasn't just going to like hit on that up front. But the reality is he was so frustrated. His clients were frustrated. I'm like, so let me get this straight. You spend all this time and energy and money to acquire this lead that becomes a client. Isn't the goal to make the client experience so great that you can just rely on more warm referrals? And if your lender is screwing that up, what is the monetary value of that screw up? It's a lot more than $4,000 a month. You told me your average sales price is $5,000. Or 500,000. That's 15 grand. You guys get what I'm saying. But my point is sometimes the psychology from your agent might be, I have to give up $4,000 a month, and you have to walk them through. But what is truly the cost of not working with myself and the team and what we provide during the transaction?
There's so much gold in what you guys both what you said. Like, I love what you said. Like, I'm doing you a disservice if you don't work with my team. And this is true for realtors building a team and LOs. Like, you have to have that confidence. Now, you could probably fake confidence, but people can see through that. So if you don't have that confidence, like you got like mega teams, right? 722 transactions you said last year. Holy smokes. You have confidence, all the confidence in your world, probably because of your brand and your team, right? If you don't have that, you're listening. I guess the exercise is, why don't you have that confidence? Is it my team? Because it's tough to build a team. We know that. Is it you? Is it your brand? Like, what is it? So go through that exercise and pursue what you're saying, because that is 100% true. Like, you got to believe what you do so much that, man, if you don't work with our team, I'm doing you a disservice, because our team's the best in Washington State, because that's where we're at right now. I love what you guys said. Like, I knew we were going to have some gold, and that was like one of the first ones.
Well, you're on to something, though. I'd like to stay here for one more minute, because here's the thing. If you don't have that confidence, you can only fake it until you make it for so long. Right. But then you're going to start lying to yourself, because you're going to know that you're not that good. Yeah. And so that confidence, and this is something, if I were to add the third thing that I would advise young Dan Keller on, understand mental toughness, understand mental health a lot better. I used to joke about it. And at 46, there is something to be said to have someone to talk to. Like we were talking about it last night when you're going through a tough time, being able to talk to another dude about it instead of just, putting it away on a bookshelf. But also having the ability to have mental toughness. Like, how do you build mental toughness? How do you build confidence? How do you build your self-esteem? How do you build yourself? And I think a lot of that, I learned this a long time ago from Ed Milet, and it resonated with me because of me being an athlete in the weight room. Just do one more. If you do one more rep and you compound that over time, you're going to get 1% better, right? The compound effect, right? The more work you put in, that builds confidence. And so you get to the point too, when you're in the weight room in the morning. I know you and I both work out in the mornings. I see your Instagram. I hate it. It's the one, I do it because I dislike it so much that's a victory for me. And so by doing that, it builds my confidence. And then by being able to do one more rep or one more minute on the treadmill when I don't want to, I deserve success because I put in the work. So these are things that you build from a mental toughness standpoint that work over time. And then getting better at Mortgage Coach, getting better at mortgage presentations, getting better at realtor meetings. I used to practice on my team. Like I used to practice on my LP. Like fake like you're a realtor.
Yeah.
Ring, ring.
Yeah.
And they're like, and they were trying to not set
Why are you calling me?
what do you want?
Yeah.
And so I think those reps build that confidence. And I think that's really big because you can't only fake it so long.
One thing I want to add, and I'll throw to you guys because I want to hear your answers too, but this has been really valuable, just I think for everybody. If I can add anything to that conversation, I see people settle on their teams back to where we started with Dave's, like building a team and going back. Believe in the Mortgage Nerd brand so much that you don't settle. So not everybody's going to be an amazing fit for your team. That's okay. But have that confidence in yourself and where you're going to go, hey, this person isn't the right fit. I'm gonna try to find the right fit for this person. But so many people settle. And it's like, don't you believe in your brand enough to not settle? Don't settle, guys. That's the one thing I encourage. If you have somebody that's maybe not a right fit on the team, it's what Dave, who has an amazing success, he started the whole conversation with. Let me go back and talk to young Dave and encourage him to build better teams. Don't settle, guys. Have high expectations. It's okay to have high expectations for your team members. If they're not being met, then we have to have a conversation. And maybe they're just not in the right position. You know what I mean? Doesn't mean they have to be fired, but don't settle. If you're building a team, and that's your first brick, that's your first like stone that you're laying. Don't settle.
Makes me think of vision, right? Because if you have a really strong vision, you know where you're trying to go, you can filter that hire through your vision. Or do they actually fit in that vision going forward? You said, are they in the right seat, right? Is the right seat on the bus? And
Right.
I find that oftentimes we're not thinking big enough, right? You're not looking 5-10 years down the road, right? You guys built brands that were really big and you guys had a vision for it. And then you're able to use that vision to filter. I was fortunate enough to meet Dave early on in the Mortgage Coach world 20 years ago and get Mortgage Coach my first day in the business. But you had a vision and you filtered through that vision and you built an amazing team because of it.
I want to make sure something else doesn't get lost in what was just said, because you two do this incredibly well, is you're not just closing loans. I think, new loan officers or even a lot of loan officers that struggle, the goal is to close the loan on time and on budget. Let's not be off on cost and let's close it on time. But you both go beyond the transaction. And so I would just push everyone, you're creating social media content weekly that goes beyond the transaction to educate the local markets. You both give your families a total cost analysis. So you're giving them more than a rate quote. You're giving them education advice. And so that's another, I really think like when I founded Mortgage Coach, it's not Mortgage Coach, it's Wow Tools. And what was the thesis around that? It's going beyond the transaction, wowing people with advice, information, and service beyond the transaction. So I just want to make sure the audience doesn't miss that.
Well, and I think it's important, kind of goes back to what you said with comparing your chapter 2 to their chapter 20, because I'm knee deep with new loan officers that all want to be at y'all's level. And I believe when it comes down to mental toughness, their biggest challenge is the comparison trap. And they immediately think, gosh, I'm just not as good as Dan, or I don't know if I could say it just like Denise just did. And I love how she does her videos. Or what if I'm in Seattle, I'm in Dan's market. Gosh, I couldn't go up against one of his agents. And so they kind of put you all on a pedestal and they, put them here and they think they could never get there. So for me, it's anyone who's listening to this who is struggling with that comparison. And I hope that we reveal some of the earlier stories that you guys shared even last night and today of what you went through for the journey and loving the process and being mentally tough and just having grace on yourself and permission to get it wrong so you can one day get there. But there is no quick fix or instant button to get there.
Yeah. Denise didn't start her first year, even though you killed it. We talked about it yesterday. You did really well, but you didn't start doing 722 transactions.
And it was also in 2012 when rates were in the low threes, which we've never seen ever, historically ever. So it's like after I graduated college, my first job was in aggressive phone sales. It was like boiler room. I had to make 400 dials a day. My manager listened to my recording. At the end of every day, they criticize like every little word that came out. There's like, if you say a sentence that starts with unfortunately, that doesn't land well, that's the coaching I got at the very start of selling. I won't even tell you guys what I was selling, but the point is,
But now we want to know. Since
yeah,
you said that.
no,
That's
just
a big
kidding. No, I was
tease.
just kidding. It was like online drop shipping, wholesale. You can start a business online. So if someone was shopping for a bowling ball online, that was my lead that they wanted to start an online business. Anyways,
Wow.
that's a whole nother
Interesting.
podcast.
Yeah.
Give us your script on that.
My point is I had to develop trust and rapport really quickly on the phone. And so when I got into mortgage in 2012, rates were so low that you could call anybody in the phone book. If you don't know what a phone book is, that's another topic, but I could call anybody. It was easy. So
Little Steve Martin YouTube.
yeah,
You should
yeah.
insert that right here.
But
Phone
I mean,
book.
so it's not that, but that's the whole thing with comparison. I did get a little bit lucky in that I started out in 2012 when rates were low. I had no call reluctance because I just worked.
You still had to make 400 calls. You're talking down
I-
your success.
I did.
You still
but,
had to make 400.
But I'm just saying, if you had to get in when rates were, let's say you got in 2015 when everybody had already just refinanced, or there's just there is a level of luck. You work hard. There's a level of luck that I got into it at a good time. I started a database right when I got into it. And so you got to work hard. Sometimes you get a little bit
I think you're
lucky as
being
well.
humble. I think there was 100 of you, like there are 100 other Denises, and you outproduced them in the same opportunity, the same luck.
I would say your team. I mean, you nailed it with the team. So going back to what you said, and you have people that are still with you today that have the same conviction that she does, which that has been watching her from the sidelines and seeing the growth of how she's been able to take her story, and now the people that she has with her now is they sell or share with the same conviction, where they all believe in the same crusade and what the nerd represents for the community, not just for the family.
I never knew about the call center stuff. How impactful was that on you? I would have loved someone to audit my calls when I first got
Isn't
in.
that crazy?
Right?
My team, when I tell them, I'm like, we need to record your calls, because
Yeah.
hearing your calls and how you talk to people, it's so powerful.
Oh, yeah.
And I had that for 6 months. I joke about this company a lot, but had I not started there fresh out of college, I just paid my way through the best university in Texas, which is Texas A&M.
Jeez.
But I paid for it.
Subjective.
We really have to get that in. All right,
Oh,
good.
yeah. But I mean, I paid for it myself, no student loans. And so when I graduated, my family, my friends were like, wait, you're going to go work for a straight commissioned phone sales? Like, you didn't even need a college degree to work there. Pretty sure half the people there were felons. Totally fine. They were great salespeople. But every day we had to listen to 30 minutes of a personal development with your manager, like the group of you, of either Tony Robbins or whoever, because you were so rejected. Like, that was all part of their thing. Every day, 30 minutes personal development. And then you had to sit there and listen to your conversation with your manager and hear how many times you said, or just the little trigger words and the vocabulary that we say that we don't think trigger people,
Unfortunately, that's huge. You
It
can't say that
is.
word.
It is.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Looking back, that's like amazing training for like getting into the business or for anything, really.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, what's
I don't know
funny
that would change
is-
anything for you.
I was a teacher and I was trying to supplement my income, and she's like, you should just try this. You should come here. Let's start. I lasted a day because when I'm on the phone, I'm a talker and I love relationships, and I end up finding out like their kids' names and their DNA. And Denise was like, oh no, like you got to get, like this is sales.
You got 40 seconds to get their social and a 4-year
and I'm like,
commitment.
tell me about your day.
I'm like, I don't care what their dog's name is. Let's go.
But hold on a second. You were making 400 calls a day. So it was a job, and people get in the mortgage business to set their own hours, and they just don't have that, in real estate, to have that conviction to work. So I got to imagine that the reason you were successful your first year as a loan officer was because you didn't work half a day, go to lunch, have a drink at the dinner and then not come back. You actually worked hard. And like, what was that like when you got into business?
I was raised by a single dad. Grew up playing sports. So I'm naturally very competitive. I would say the older me is not competitive with other people. I'm competitive with myself. So it kind of started back even when I was in high school and I was working at Sonic. with rollerblades, and I had this. I'm telling you, rollerblades.
Just the Denise Donoghue show right
Yeah, we
here.
need the
This is
B-roll.
great.
We have the B-roll of that.
Man,
We pull that
man,
up.
my rollerblades were kicking, and you didn't have the card back then. So my biggest tip at Sonic was $10. I was really impressed by that. But I started putting money into a bank account, and when I got $100 in the bank account, I was like, "Ooh, I got $100 in the bank account." I mean, I was probably like 14.
Get new rollerblades.
Yeah, about to get the glow in the dark ones.
Not anymore.
Yeah. But there was a little bit of competitiveness of like, how much can I get into the bank account? And then I started working at this call center, and that bank account got bigger and bigger. And then that company went under, and I was used to making so much in a month, even at a young age. And I was telling Ryan, when the company went under, I started working at Chase. And I remember when they hired me, they're like, "You're going to get a $30,000 base salary, and we're going to pay you $7 if you help somebody open a checking account." And I was like, 7.00.
Did you mean 70?
I was like,
or?
"Oh my gosh, that's so it started with this competitive nature of kind of like when you're at the gym and you're like, let me put 5 more pounds on, or let me do 1 more minute on the treadmill. For me, it was, let me see how much money I can get in the bank account, because my parents were broke. They lost everything. And so that's kind of what started my competitiveness, is let me get in, work hard, because I wanted, in a weird way, I wanted that number to grow. And then I got obsessed with, how do I make my money work smarter? Because that's what my parents couldn't figure out. And I didn't learn that, unfortunately, at Texas A&M. I learned it the hard way, and studying, and the hard knocks way. And so that's what my drive was, is let me be competitive with myself, with my bank account. And at that time, it was, be competitive on the scoreboard. I wanted to be number one with all the other loan officers that were there. Is if they can do it, why can't I do it? I mean, I went to sales mastering, and I saw all these people on stage. They were predominantly men, not to be sexist, but they were predominantly men talking about, Shayla Gifford mentions this, their success and how much money they were making. And, I think my parents total made more, like 60,000 their whole together. And I'm like, if they can do it, why can't I? So that was the drive, is I was like, I can do this.
Well, and our dad raised us to be very scrappy. So we were, delivery table surprise twins. And so he would always put us side by side. We were basically the boys he never had. And it was, he would wake us up before school. We'd have to make 50 free throws before. And then after, we were in a lot of club sports. We would do soccer afterwards. And it was she and I competing constantly. And it was so bad that when we were in high school, we couldn't even be on opposite teams guarding each other, because it was blood. I mean, it didn't matter.
I love that, though.
Yeah, it was like we were
coach was like,
scrappy.
I love
that competition.
We were short, and so you kind of had to be mean, and it was like, blood in the water. We were going to win.
Pointy elbows. Don't mess around.
Yeah. So not only competitive, but super scrappy and just willing to do whatever it took, where you have to sacrifice. And that's what people don't always see when you guys are at your level. And when I'm working with the loan officers that I am, is if that's where you want to be, you have to be willing to do what they did and what they still do to get there. And it's not easy. And although they make it look easy, and even in my little couple of years that I was originating with Denise, and I got to that point where I'm like, well, I've got 4 kids. I could do this. Like, she's just going happy hours all the time and, taking agents out. I could do this. Is easy. Yeah, she made it look really easy for that systematic process of this leads coming in. And it was very humbling to go out on my own and be like, holy cow, I thought it would be a lot easier than what it is. And
It's a little bit more than golf and happy hours.
but from a production partner standpoint, it can be where you create this illusion of like, oh, well, they're just on vacation, or, they don't see all the behind the scenes text. Yeah.
I mean, it starts with the work ethic.
Yeah.
Well, that was my point. You just have to work hard. You have to get there and do it. And that's the number one thing I see when people ask me, well, how did you build a team that can do 500 loans a year consistently? I said, I worked really hard. And even when I, got to the second company I worked at, and I sat in a cubicle, and I got in, early before everyone was in, and then they all went to lunch and never came back. I mean, I just worked hard, and all of a sudden they're like, oh, number 10, Todd, and then number 9. And all of a sudden I was number 1, and they were like, how did you do it? I'm like, I outworked you, right? I mean, I outworked you. I wasn't great. I had so many things I was working on. I already said I wasn't executing. I would have just done not, is better than perfect. But in the end, that was what I was taking away from that, is I think, you guys work so hard, right? Everyone here has worked really hard to grow where you guys have grown. And so I just always say, you got to self-reflect. If you're listening to this, whether it's real estate or mortgage, are you putting in the work to get to where you're trying to go? And if you're not, then you just have to self-reflect on that.
Can you
because
give somebody work ethic? Because I'm with Dave. Like I see that's the biggest differentiator between top producers and bottom.
Well, it's mindset, right? I mean,
Yeah.
these, it's that whole idea of, do I want to do it? But I think it's also knowing what to do, right? And I think you can build a work ethic. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think you can. I think if you know what it takes to get there, if I know I'm going to have to do 400 calls a day to be, kick ass in the call center, then I got to decide, do I want to work that hard? Do I want to do 400 calls a day? And if I only choose to do 200 a day, then I know that I'm probably at best going to be half as good as I want it to be. And I think that's where people fail in these businesses, is they don't know what they need to do to be successful. Or if they do, they're just not really truly committed to it. Like they say, yeah, I want to do it. Oh, well, I didn't do that today. Like, oh, I should have made 40 calls and I made 35 or 30 or 20, whatever that number is. And they're just not committed to it. And I just love what you said, Deb. I wrote it down, right? If you want to get to where they are, you got to do what they did to get there. And so that's why I respect you guys so much. I think that's really what's a good takeaway.
That is a really good takeaway. And also something I just heard and thought of listening to this is you guys gamify what you're doing, and you are competing with someone outside yourself. So not comparing, but competing. And then you create your own game. And I think, that's another piece of advice I'd give to young self is figure out how to make the things that are most important to your success fun. And how do you make things fun? You make them a game. And you look at, Win by Noon and the daily tracking, that turns things into a game. You look at when we rolled out gamification at Mortgage Coach, where it's like, hey, go from white belt to black belt to a red belt. And people, because we gamified getting better at giving advice.
Last night at dinner, talking about who's a red belt and a black belt.
Oh,
and, still talking about it today and celebrating it.
We get calls all the time when people move companies. They're like, I don't want to lose my black belt.
Yeah.
What about that LO that texted you saying, what's the most he sees any new LO's ever done in a year? He's not competitive.
Yeah,
right.
So advice to everyone is figure out what you're missing that you need to do, and then gamify it for yourself, and then have someone to compete. Yeah. So anyways, great takeaways.
I would say gamify it for your team too. And that does include processors. Yeah. So you got to gamify it for everybody.
Crosses over to executive level too, not just at the LO level, but executive level. Like you were talking about doing 500 units, and Dave shared a stat with me. I think you had done that for over 10 years straight. So I don't know if you go back and tell your young self anything different, because you've just done nothing but crush it, Win by Noon, and 500 units. And so is there anything that you go back and tell your young self to do differently? Because
well, like I said, I would just execute. I think I could have gotten there quicker, right? I mean, I sat down, I had a great coach, Bill Hart, and he made me write a vision out. I said I was going to be a $100 million producer. And then I set off to build it. I knew what it looked like, right? I had people in the industry who I could follow, right? You guys weren't there at the time, but I was following the other greats. But I hit a point where a lot of other people, I believed my own press. I thought I was pretty good. We were doing 400 loans a year, $80 million, and it was great income, but I had to have that self-reflection. I took the time to look at my plan and look at the year I had. And I said, gosh, that's been 3 great years, but I'm still not the $100 million producer I said I was going to be. And so I had to say, okay, well, what is it? What's missing? What can I do differently? And for me, it was saying yes, right? I said yes to everyone whenever, if you said, hey, when, can you meet me tomorrow at 9? I said, yep. You said, okay, can you meet me on Thursday at 10? I said, yep. Can you meet me on Friday at 5 o'clock? Yep. I was a yes man because I thought everyone wanted that. And what I realized was I just wasn't getting my most important priorities done. And so, when there's a clear path to grow in this business or whatever business you're in, you just have to figure that out. And so people have heard my story. I just blocked my calendar from 8:30 to 11:30 every day and made sure the things that I told everyone I did, which I did do, I just didn't do it consistently. And guess what? You do things consistently before you get distracted by everything else, right? You do one more rep, and all of a sudden it happens. Your conversion rates increase, everything goes up. Because you guys were talking about it. I think you said it's a disservice if you don't use me as a realtor. I felt like it was a disservice if I didn't get your loan. I felt like you were getting bad advice. And then I had to ask myself, well, are you acting that way? Like if I'm not actually calling the lead, most people quit after 1 or 2. Only, it's like less than 20% of people make more than 2 calls to a lead. And I thought if I think I'm that good, then I got to actually do it. So then I forced myself to have a system before I got distracted to get that next call done, to go after it, because I believed in myself that if Denise was my client, that she was better served by me. And miraculously, I grew my business 45% by just doing that in 1 year, and closed. That's the first year we hit over 500 loans, did 551 loans, and that was it. And, as I became a coach and started talking about it, most people know it's my win by noon story. Win by 11:30 didn't sound that cool, but win by noon, but win by noon did. And so it's just, it's not that difficult. It's just a matter of taking the time to figure it out. And for me, it's changed my life.
That's so good.
I would have won by noon faster. That was another advice to self. Really, because it was all about winning the day, winning the week. And to win the day, you have to win by noon.
From a tactical standpoint, what it just triggered a thing in my head is when I finally wrote out my own CRM, which was probably 3 or 4 years ago. I would have done this sooner, but how did I want my follow-up process to look like from a prospect? How did I want them to look like when they were pre-qualified, pre-approved, closed, funded? I wish I would have mapped that out. And this was not a fancy map. It was on Excel. I had tabs, and I was like, literally, do I want to call them? Do I want to email them? Do I want to text them 1 day later, 2 days later, 3 days later? And I did it all in Excel. And then I took that and I put it into a CRM. But had I mapped that out sooner, I think number one, it gives a very clear roadmap to your team, but it also gave a really clear roadmap to my real estate agents. That was like, I'm so intentional with my business. I've thought through each aspect of it. This is how I will handle your clients. So the realtors got confidence. But then I had confidence and clarity to speak to of this is what will happen even post-closing, because there's a lot that we do. I know like how you do post-closing, which is what I feel like is a disservice when clients don't work with us, because are you getting an annual review? Home values have appreciated like crazy. If your loan officer has not told you to check to see if you can remove PMI on your loan, that hurts my heart, literally hurts my heart. And there's so many Americans after COVID who may have lost their job or lost their bonuses or racked up credit card debt. And how are we not spewing this out from the mountaintops and on social media? And that's what drives me. It gives me goosebumps. Teach people how to manage their money. That's what we should be doing.
Budgetwithdan.com.
Well, Deb, you said it so perfectly. It was a couple of months ago on a mortgage coach call that I was the co-host, and you said, show me. You can talk about how I say I want to help my clients come out the other side of home ownership in a better financial position. I tell everyone that. I say it a million times throughout the transaction. You're like, show me in your reviews. I want your clients to be saying that in your reviews. Show me in your annual reviews. Show me in your activities and who you are. And so budgetwithdan.com is my actions match my words, right? And I think it's so important as a mortgage professional moving forward, or if you're a young mortgage professional, you need to ace financial literacy. And that's why I love Mortgage Coach so much, because a big part of your passion is financial literacy. And we need to know that. We need to understand it. We need to know it. We need to teach it. It's on us. Teachers aren't teaching it in high school.
So how did you learn it for yourself?
Guys and gals like you, and just listening to people on social media and then following people. And then once I found how important it was for me personally, once I started tracking what was coming in every single month and what was going out, and then giving that difference a job. And I didn't learn this until about 7 years ago. I'm 46. So in my late 30s, I started to figure this out. I figured it out too late. I figured out compounded interest too late. So that would probably be my number one thing. Let me go back. Can we rewind? My number one piece of advice to the young Dan Keller was understand the rule of 72 and compounded interest, period, and abide by it. Subscribe to it, period. Because it's not going to change. And it hasn't. Go back and look 20 years. Rate of return. Rule of 72. Look at all the houses that we've owned, even through that 08, 09. They've gone up in value. They've doubled every 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, whatever. So same thing with money in the stock market. So I think that's so important. Being financially literate. As a mortgage professional, if you're not financially literate, you can't have that confidence to be like, I'm the best choice. I'm going to take the best care of you because I understand how money works.
Well, if you don't, then you better have the lowest rate, because
there you go.
That's all you have to offer is lowest rate and lowest cost. And that is a disservice to Americans, to our communities. There's not enough people to teach it. Here's what's sad to me is, our dad growing up, he only knew what he knew about finance because of his parents or his circle that he was with. And that's, a lot of people think that you have to make a lot of money to have a financial conversation with any kind of advisor, whether it's a financial advisor or a CPA. I don't need a CPA unless I'm making this much money or have this business, or But it's just so not true. And if you don't talk to those advisors or those types of professionals, then your knowledge level is probably going to be limited to what your parents or your circles teach you. And you'll just literally get into the retirement age only knowing that amount unless you get outside of that bubble. And it's 2022 with YouTube around. I mean, there's just really no excuse to not be able to say, okay, if you're 25, 35, 45, you can YouTube almost anything and learn. You don't even have to have that walk-in conversation, consultation. You can YouTube it. So as a loan officer, you better be YouTubing it. Go look at Dan's website. Go look at his, but I mean, I've looked at his stuff. I've even emailed him and say, hey buddy, like
I got snapshots of it on my phone.
Yeah. Can
There's
you go
one
ahead
I
and
can
send
show
that
you
to
about
me?
retirement.
Could you at least hire a web guy to build you out a better? I did all that on my own, by the way. I'm not a web guy. I just
done
need
is
to
better
get-
than perfect.
Done is better than
Done
perfect.
is
I had to
better.
get it out there. It's
But to
PDF.
both of y'all's points, so you just said the way you built that confidence and how you learned was by people like you and with social media. And then you just gave the advice, like with our dad, that he only knew what he knew because of his circle of influence. And what did y'all do? Y'all went and you YouTubed it or you Googled. So anyone listening to this, I hope your conviction matches your destiny enough where you're willing to then share the financial truths that y'all have learned and get it on social, because that is a way for 2022 and the shift that we're coming in. It no longer matters who your circle of influence is when it's on social and you're using social for good and to educate, because someone out there needs to hear these lessons. And it's just not enough. The great advisors, I have some great mortgage coach advisors that are so good at what they do. And I'm like, why keep it a secret? Use this as a one-to-many strategy. Get that out there so that one, other people are learning from you all, like you learned, you said from Denise. But two, when people are Googling, I want them to hear from you guys. I don't want them to go. And that's what I love about what I do is I'm connecting families to people who care about what they do and they want to give good advice. And so get your message out there and teach.
The one thing you mentioned that nobody's really said yet that was kind of like devil's in the details of what you talked about is you talked about them refining their styles and their business together. And I'm a big proponent of you are the company you keep. So if you're a $20 million producer wanting to be a $200 million producer, you are the company you keep. You guys, very successful tech companies, you are the company you keep. And I think it elevates each other. You guys have talked about it all day about, oh, I followed you on this. I followed you on that. So guys, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. And luckily we have amazing people that share their stories and how they got there. So seek them out. I know these people. Anybody here would take time to go, hey, let me sit down with you. Let me talk to you. And maybe not an entire day, but, take a phone call or whatnot. So leverage other people in this industry. When you talked about the financial literacy piece, I think I'm becoming an old dog in the business. I used to be the young guy, but I think about changing it. Like it's crazy to me that's not part of the NMLS to get our license. That should be. I told Dave a long time ago, I think it's one of the nicest compliments I gave him. I said, our standard's low for financial literacy. We give them an LE that is really complicated and tough to understand. I would love to change the business to where there isn't an LE, but there's a TCA. You know what I mean? Like, why isn't that? And I want to think bigger. Like, well, okay, let's actually change that. Let's change the requirements to be a licensed originator to where you actually truly, like some of the questions, like you guys have got all your licenses in different states. You're just like, this is not what we do every day. And so we can change that. We can use the Ken Perrys of the world to kind of change, the testing to go, yeah, I agree with you. We should understand financial literacy at the highest level. That should be step one. Now you got your license, but it's not there yet. But maybe some of those old dogs can change it.
Most loan officers, while they may know how to, fundamentally manufacture a loan and close a loan, they really don't know how to create fiscal literacy. I mean, there are so many just small how-tos that are life-changing that I truly believe the loan officer could be the single most valuable advisor to a family, more valuable than a CPA, more valuable than a financial planner. And when it comes to a family's financial well-being and their financial freedom. So you two do an incredible job of leading by example.
So we should just start like a financial literacy. We'll create a certification. So
There
if
you
you're a
go.
loan officer with an NMLS, you want to look for the certification of the, financial school.
Yeah,
and then
just
it's
build
like,
something.
yeah.
So we're going to put, when's this date?
Yeah.
You're going to do this by,
We'll
let's
figure it
by
out.
noon.
We'll figure it out. But For real, you need to you need to learn. Well, even if it's not for yourself, you have to learn. If you're just pulling someone's credit and looking at their debts, and they're putting 20% down, and they have 15 grand in credit card debt, and you're not pausing and saying, "Hey, I know you want to put 20% down, but what if we did 15%? We bought out the MI and wiped out your credit card debt." That's what we're talking about by not just being an order taker, by really being the doctor and saying, "I see a problem."
All right. So if you're a real estate agent and you're like, what the heck did she just say? That means you probably have the wrong loan officer. And if I was a real estate agent listening to this, I'd be asking, what is how financially literate are you? I mean, I'd be asking questions to my loan officer around this, because I think it's really important that if I'm a real estate agent, I want my clients to get the best advice, not $4,000. You brought up Ken Perry, so Ken will speak in on that one for us.
Yes, exactly.
But I think that's great. And I think at some point we got to get back to when we push reset, what would you say to your younger self? Because we didn't get there yet. We don't have to stop there now, but I'm not going to let you off the
We
hook.
haven't got Deborah either.
I know. She alluded to it a little bit.
Well, I just wanted to say, those who are listening that need help of where to get the knowledge for the financial literacy piece, follow Mortgage Coach, the community on the Facebook group there, and the YouTube channel. Subscribe. I did this long ago, and I would hit the little notification button, because you have the rock stars like Dan and like Denise who share their wisdom. And it's because Dave and Todd are behind the scenes making sure that they're getting the right people to just simply provide enough value where you can learn. And that's where you get your PhD in this stuff. I have not found anything else where it's real, it's raw, it's people in the trenches of how you then apply this. So you've got to get into that community. You've got to plug in, participate, commit to commenting and asking questions. Like, we do these calls twice a week. And there's a lot of people that will show up, but not always participate. And it's like, be selfish with your knowledge. You're there. If you're investing your time, you're choosing to spend your time to listen, be all in and brave enough to ask those questions that are going to help you while we have the people live. So for those struggling with financial literacy, please check out.
I learned what recasting was by watching a Mortgage Coach, because there was a loan officer. I'd been a loan officer for 4 years, never heard of that ever in my life. And then there was a loan officer doing an example TCA, and they said recasting. And I was like, wait, pause, rewind. What? Is that like a, and so I asked my manager, and he was like, you don't know what recasting is? I'm like, no, I've been, you know what I mean? How would I?
It wasn't on the test.
Which is a game changer so you just learn little nuggets like that. Had I not just plugged into subscribe to the YouTube channel and, nerd and studied it. So
this is where real life comes in. Dave's got to go do a call. We're going to come back and get to Deborah's. And then also we're going to get into chapter 2 of everybody's life.
All right.
There. So I want to go back to chapter 2 or 3. You were talking about yourself at JPE and the difference of starting off good and then kind of having like some adversity. But before we do that, I want to hear, like, if you're young, so it's tough to go back to an even younger version of yourself, and you've already had an amazing success already. So if you went back to a younger version of yourself, what would you say? What would be the advice?
Well, I'm going to try not to say the word why, because I know Dan doesn't like that word. But if I were going to just answer authentically, it would be really being committed to learning your why and then protecting that without letting other outside influences cause you to drift. So I appreciate your comment with the success, and I'll tell you, it was not really as glamorous as, even Denise's journey. We're identical twins. She's a lot older than I am. She's 12 minutes older. So, just want to point that out.
12 minutes wiser.
I started off, my first degree was nursing. My second degree was education. I really wanted to be the Patch Adams of the hospital until I learned that's not quite reality, because when you're a nurse and you're with kids and they're burned and, they don't love when you're coming in with needles. So I went the teaching route and I coached, and I just loved taking the broken kids from homes that were destroyed, that they just needed love. And I knew that's what they needed. And I've always been passionate about helping the ones that, they're just right there before high school, where you could make a huge change that will affect their trajectory for life. And that was the craziest part, is those kids would come back to me, and they still do, to like buy homes now or to show me what they've accomplished. So that's kind of crazy. But I had my third child, and my husband was a baseball coach, football coach, and a teacher. And I had Denise contact me, and she was like, do you realize you're my number one referral source than any agent I work with? Like, I close more deals from you. And I've just always been a natural connector, where I would try to find someone's problem and go solve it. And that's what made me a great loan officer with the agent partners that I worked with, or divorce attorneys, is I like solving people's problems. I always thought I was good at that. I wanted to connect people to those who cared about what they did and the services they provide to the ones who needed it the most. And so, long story short, I got into originating, and I tried to be the nerd, and I wasn't the nerd. It was almost soul destroying because I loved the education piece of it and creating the content and helping business partners grow their business. And I always have been fascinated in studying personal development, why humans do what they do, business strategy. And I would find myself distracted going into different marketing courses and helping build out CRMs for agent partners. And I just realized that my big why and my gift that I'm supposed to be doing is teaching and making a bigger impact than what I was able to do just one-on-one with the communities that we were serving. And I felt selfish. And, we're taught through, society that when you're selfish, that's bad. And I realized, you know what? No, I may not make as much money as I could in originating, but I love connecting people, and I could do this in a bigger way where, I don't have to be the lead singer. It's not my social media account that I cared about. It was the messaging that, if done consistently through the right vessels of all these amazing mortgage advisors out in the country, then if I'm the content creator providing the fuel to these vessels, then over time we could actually change the world and create a paradigm shift for the families who need it most. And that educational awareness, which is my passion because I love to learn and I love to teach. I needed to find the advisors who cared enough to get the message out there so that people knew who to contact when they needed good advice, and people who are going to stay involved in their life because the strategy created maybe that first TCA when you close on your home. Well, sometimes life happens and the strategy needs to change. It needs to pivot, whether that's divorce, births, deaths, things that have happened with COVID. It's like, do you have that captain of your wealth team that's actually just checking in with you and helping you with your situation when ego may get involved and you feel shame to even admit that you can't pay the bills? It's like, how can you leverage this pent up equity in your home? And do you know who to contact? Is there someone there who's willing to care enough to stay involved to make sure your family's fed? Because I saw firsthand in the school system what happens when kids come from homes that are, 74% or 64% of Americans, their number one stress is finance, and it just trickles down. So, it was a difficult journey, going through the process of being a teacher and then trying to be the mortgage nerd when I wasn't the nerd, and, kind of drifting from my why and not allowing outside influences like money,
But it seems like everything clicked for you when everything was aligned with your purpose and your why. And I think that's the big takeaway from what you said is so many people will see you or see DK or see Denise and they want to beat them. Don't be DK. We already have one. Don't be Denise. We already got one. You know what I mean? You can learn from them, of course, every single day, but be true and authentic to your purpose, your strengths that God gave you. Find that alignment. I'm guessing you'll probably be happier. Probably never really felt like you worked a day in your life. Like for me, I don't. I love this business. The hardest day, I still love it. I'm fortunate to be in it. I thank God that I'm in it every day, and it's not a grind to me. I work hard, and there's long days, but I never regret it. And I feel that's what I'm hearing from you. When you got that alignment, like everything fit, everything worked.
Just to be clear, I was great at faking it. Like my social media, you would think I had the perfect family, perfect marriage. I was very successful. Like that was a front that I was great at wearing this mask when, let's be real, this was Hot Mess Express. Denise had her shit together all the time.
That's
podcast
title. I love that.
You want to know
Mess
what
Express.
not to do? Just ask me. That's why I feel like I'm so good at almost coaching people, because I'm like, oh yeah, I got you. I've worn that t-shirt before too. Let me help you. I'll compress your time, because every wrong path you could have gone, I would take until I got real honest with myself and was like, you know what? I want to do something that sets my soul on fire. And I love finding the vein in people and taking it to the heart and being like, let's go, let's do this. And so, yes, that would be my biggest tip is know your why.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Good one.
Not know your why. I think find it. You found it. Your purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing it is
it.
hard. I don't even know if
But
I know mine, right? But finding it is.
But I would I would watch you guys and watch other people on Mortgage Coach that were and I would put myself here and I would be like, okay, well, if they're doing this or believe this, and I better inject their values onto me when maybe I didn't necessarily believe the same things or value
Right.
the
That's
same
the
things.
authenticity part.
And so that's when I was like, I gotta stay true to me. And even if that means I'm different, and again, we're identical twins, everybody wants us to be the same. And I'm like, but there's that Deb X a little bit. There's a little
Just
bit
a little
rougher.
edgier. The bird is a little edgier than
I don't like a
the
cage. I like to, so
The bird is a little edgier.
a little edgier.
than the
Definitely
nerd.
the nerd. Yeah.
It was funny. We sat down to dinner last night, which was so cool to hang out with you guys and have a really cool dinner. And again, guys, you see these amazing, successful individuals on chapter 30, and organically, this just came out. The first kind of conversation we had, and it was really surprising. But I want to speak to this because I think so many people will connect to it. But struggle came up. Denise shared about it in the best year of her life. Adversity and overcoming adversity and mental toughness. Dan was talking about it earlier, and checking in on people through COVID and through isolation while doing 722 loans. And Dan, you shared adversity as well in 2021. And so many people struggled over the last 2 years. And I think they look at you guys and go, well, their life's wine and roses. It's all uphill. It's all perfect for them. And we sat down together, and that was one of the first topics we talked about, is how things were difficult for us, and we had to work through it and be counselors for our teams and stuff. So I know people listening are struggling. Their business maybe isn't functioning. Marriage has struggled through the last couple of years, and that, I've been married over 20 years. I mean, we shared about it yesterday. So speak to those guys, gals that are struggling maybe and personally. You guys have overcome this. You guys have faced adversity, and I think that's where you guys, everybody's been able to continue to overcome. But some people aren't. They're in the midst of it right now, with professionally and personally. And it was so cool that you guys were so humble to talk about it yesterday. I'll start with Dan. What would you say to those, that guy or gal listening right now, going, yeah, I'm in the shit right now.
Yeah.
I need help.
Well, we're all going to go through it. 2021 certainly had a couple of, one of the best years ever financially for me, but I had to encounter something that broke me. So one, I think I would know that you're going to at some point encounter adversity in life, whether it's a divorce or a death, heaven forbid, or, something for me personally was taken away from me that meant the world to me. Right. And so I think being grounded in some form of faith. My faith is in Jesus Christ. Without that, I would have been a mess. Without that faith of mine, I wouldn't be married right now. I wouldn't be the father that I am to my 2 kids. And certainly I wouldn't be the mentor to my clients and loan officers that I am. And so I think you got to be grounded in something bigger than you.
Yeah.
I think that's so big. And I believe in my faith and in my Lord that when crud hits the fan, you're going to need someone to grab onto. And for me, that faith, Jesus is that hand, that guy to grab onto.
I have a mentorship group that we talk once a month. And I remember sharing how you doing, Hills? How you doing, Hills? And I remember saying a lot, I'm in the fire. And then the Bible talks about being in the fire and being refined in the fire. And I'm I'm in the fire, guys. Again, I'm sorry to update you for the 3rd or 4th time in a row. I'm in the fire again. But I would say I rejoice because I know that there's refinement and there's a better version of me through that fire. So I spend a lot of time in the fire, but I just kind of try to getting my mind right. There's a better version on the outside of this. I'm going through it. It's refining me. So I'm gonna stay in here. You said be where your feet are at. So I was in the fire a lot last year.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that it made me the whole body was on fire for a long time.
But you got to have faith in the fire.
Yep.
You can't rush to get out of it. You got to know where you're at, and you got to have faith. Dave had a really good real estate partner of mine, Zach McDonald, on Mortgage Coach the other day, and young kid, 30 years old. And I meet with him every other Friday. We have a Bible study together, and we just go over the word. He was a youth pastor before he got into real estate. And, we were talking this last year, and this isn't, I'm not trying to get too religious on y'all, but we were talking at our last Bible study, and I said, I wonder what my life would look like right now had I not read all the books and subscribe to all the teachings and the podcasts and scripture that I've put in my brain over the last 10 to 20 years. It scared me because I wouldn't be here.
That's a great point.
So we got to invest in
that
ourselves.
foundation that you had to pull from.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not to divulge, but when you're talking about your chapter 2 or 3 or whatever chapter that was for you, you started off really, really well, amazing success. I won't divulge the financials, but it dropped like almost 10x from what you were earning. And that's humbling, but you worked through that. And also, so I want you to touch on that. Like, how did you work through that? And then you also, I mean, it sounds like we've all kind of struggled through the last couple of years, even though there was success there, there's still struggles.
Yeah. So what he's talking about, my first job out of college, I was there for 6 months and then that company went under. And when that company went under, there was a guy that was there and said, "You're so good on the phone, you should come get into mortgages." And that was 2007. So I get into mortgages and it was a lot of just what do they call them? What was that? Anyways, it was a lot of outbound phone calls. And that was during the start of the housing crash. And I remember I had like 3 loans that were supposed to close. And we walked in that day and our manager was like, "We don't have money to fund these loans." And and I'm like, "What? Oh my gosh, I have to make these phone calls to these buyers." And so the company went under. And so I was with 2 companies fresh out of college that had gone under. And I was like, screw this. I'm going to follow what my older sister did. I'm going to get into banking. I went and worked for a big bank and my goal was to become a financial advisor. But to become that, you had to start all over from square one and start from nothing. Now, mind you, I was just 6 months into the mortgage business making bank because you could make however much money you wanted on a loan. And so when they offered me the job at Chase, it was a $30,000 base salary and I could make $7 on a checking account and $3 on a debit card if they got a debit card. And I was like, wow, okay. And thankfully, I've always been frugal and, good with my money that I didn't go out and start outliving, buying Ferraris and stuff. But it was humbling to be back in a banking environment where I remember I was literally going pee in the bathroom and my branch manager was like, "Hey, Denise, there's somebody in the lobby and we need to open a checking account. Are you done?" And I'm like, okay. I literally, you had to work 6 days a week. And if I wanted a vacation off, you couldn't have like Christmas Eve and the day after Christmas. You had to. So it was humbling. And I had been with my husband now through all of that. We actually met at the first company. But thinking about struggles, I have a 4-year-old son. What's interesting is last year I probably got the most DMs from women who were married for a while, starting to have some success in the mortgage business and either struggling with their man understanding this business and maybe the female making more money than the man, or just the time demands. When you're in startup mode of this business, you are grinding. My family had to take a sacrifice to me starting my business because my business was top priority for me. I wanted this before I got married and had a kid. And in the South, in Texas, you graduated. When you graduated, you got married and you started having kids. You didn't wait to have kids. But I have women and new moms reach out to me all the time. They're like, "I'm really struggling with how to balance. Like, I just had a newborn baby. How do I do this business and take care of my kid?" Or if it's their second kid, or, their husband's like, "What do you mean you're doing this at night or on the weekends?" And for those moms or wives that are out there, like that struggle is real. And you have to, what I didn't do is I made my husband second priority, even before we had Carter. He was second priority to the business because in my mind, if I built the business, it would take care of the family. So you just need to deal for the next few years because this is for the greater good. And I would say going back is you can't do that. You still, happy spouse, happy house. And if you can build up and really help them understand the business and get them involved and make sure that their needs are met, make sure you set time where you don't have to be in the office at 8. Maybe you go in the office at 10 because you guys go have breakfast. It is a challenge. It's hard when you have your first kid in this business. It's freaking hard when you have to send pre-qual letters on the weekends and you're at your kids' sporting events. Like, it's real and it's hard. I'm not sugarcoating it. It's hard. You have to find your balance to it. But I went through it and you can get through it. You just have to learn how to balance it. But it is hard. It's a juggling act.
And one thing we all learned at Amplify, and we talked about this yesterday, is your story, the good and the bad.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about it. I'm sure you guys learned the same thing through Amplify. You hadn't told your story before Amplify.
No.
Like even the bad parts and the tough parts.
No.
And now I think you said it's front and center on your website. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
I was ashamed of my story. I think I was ashamed because in high school, being an identical twin and we played sports, people are so fascinated by twins. They ask all these weird twin questions and, they're fascinated. So you kind of at an early age, you're put on this pedestal and we played sports. So we learned quickly how to put on a mask of disguising what was going on back at home. But so we always had this front that we have our stuff together and that no matter what was going on, you would never know it. So I think we developed that life skill. So good and bad, if I had a bad day, I would show up to work and my work was on point because I wouldn't let the bad day. So there's good that comes out from that. But the bad is that nobody ever really knows what's going on with you because you've got a poker face on, and even your spouse doesn't really know how to read you. They're like, okay, are you mad at me or are you not mad at me? Like,
Poker face.
You're okay, but are you really okay?
Right.
Well, and our dad would give love when we achieved. So
Mhm.
we are all natural achievers because that was the way to earn his
Yeah.
love. So we all knew, we were like fire ants you couldn't get rid of. There was no one that was going to outwork us. Like
Yeah.
we were gritty, but again, that goes back to, you also don't reveal weakness or reveal what's going on inside the home because we couldn't make him look bad. It was,
You had to be
go
strong.
perform. You be the best athlete. You do. The standards in the household were high. And so we developed work ethic from a very young age, and borderline Cinderella's in the house too.
But we learn, I'm sure you could speak to this too, but like when we started to share our story and the weakness part that you were conditioned not to show, like we both said, we started connecting with way more people than we ever had. I've been doing content for over a decade, a lot of success. And I'm like, oh, thank you, Renee. Like I didn't know that people actually, I think his analogy is like nobody watches Rocky to watch the end fight, right?
Yeah.
They want to see Rocky struggle and like get beat and then have to come back. I'm like, wow, that makes so much sense. Why did I miss that? And that's why I'm thankful for Renee and that process.
I think when we talk about finding the why, I didn't really realize why I was working so hard or grinding so hard until Amplify. And I realized that really my upbringing and my story was feeling that kind of fear and anxiety of not having a home and not having that stability and not really having parents that loved you. It was those feelings as a child, but then also as the man, I know my dad felt like he let us down. I know that my dad felt certain emotions that day as well. And so when I'm working today and I'm talking to families, it's like I'm working so hard because I want that dad and that mom to take some sort of financial epiphany in our conversation so that they don't ever have to feel that way. Those kids never have to feel that way. But I literally, I didn't drill down deep emotionally enough because I don't really like emotions.
She's called the icebox.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm not that cold. But I didn't actually realize oh, wow, this is why I got up on a Sunday and did my hair and makeup and shot 5 videos. And it's not because I want to get up on a Sunday and do that. It's like, I'm so driven to get that out, I think, because of those feelings I felt when I was a kid, you know? So the struggle helps you really, it gives you the grit sometimes to be, and you shouldn't be ashamed of it. I was for so long. And now I can't even believe I have a video on my website about it, but it's there.
Front and center, yeah.
Front and center. TheMortgageNerd.com. Go check it out.
Serious. Savage, Todd, you guys are quiet on this topic.
Just waiting to get teed up. You want, I guess I'll go.
You go, I'll go next.
So, and just so I'm clear on the question, so what are some tactics to deal with
I just want
challenges and struggles you've had in your
our
life?
resource community, every time we show up, it's how can we edify the community? How can we help them? And I know that a lot of people are struggling through COVID. Like I said, personally, professionally, you guys have worked through adversity. You've made a career at working through adversity. It's why you're at. So if you were to help, reach down and pull that person out, whether it's a realtor or LO or maybe struggling in a marriage, what would you share with them?
So the thing, most of the struggles I think we have as salespeople, as business builders, they're either relationship problems or they're, the narrative that we're telling our story, that we're telling ourselves. And so I go to a book a lot that I've read more times than I can count, The Four Agreements. And I listen to the audiobook because I'm ADD and dyslexic. So that is the best way for me to get that content. And I mean, usually for me, the biggest challenge, it's, one of the four agreements is your words, be impeccable with your words. And when they talk about your words, they're not just talking about what you say out loud. It's the conversation you're having. And that also kind of something that Jonathan Roach talks about, our coach and someone that we've interviewed a number of times in the mortgage coach community, pick your voice choice. Like you have a choice of which, is it a negative story or is it a positive story? But those four agreements, and for anyone who has not read the book, it's actually, I had a number of people reach out to me last year saying, hey, my daughter or my son is getting into sales, Dave, which book? You've read a lot of books. What book should they start with? And I actually had someone really close to me who's worked for me for 20 years. So Alon, if you're listening to this, Alon Perdone, reached out, and he's such an important friend of mine, and his daughter was getting into sales. He's like, what book? So I spent a weekend, I made like all my favorite books that I thought were important as a sales, get into sales. The Challenger Sale is, the book I give to like sales skill. But I ended up landing on telling him, what, give your daughter the four agreements, because what are the four agreements? Don't make any assumptions. By the way, that's a good sales strategy. Don't make assumptions. And that's also good when dealing with personal challenges. Often, they're filled with the wrong assumptions. Four agreement is don't take anything personally. That's sales 101. Like, don't take no personally. And then the fourth is, do your best. So to me, that I always think of that as a compass, just like northwest, south, there's four agreements. When I'm going through the toughest times, whether they're personal, family related, or their business, I usually listen to it. But I don't think a day goes by where I don't like just do a little pulse check. Am I executing well here? Not making assumptions, not taking things personally, being impeccable with my words, and always do your best.
I'll jump on that because last year and this year I get to coach with John Maxwell, and four agreements came up. We were talking about Maxwell yesterday, and his version of that is, he said, hey, Ryan, you need to have an understanding so there's not a misunderstanding. And that goes to like building a team with your LO to LOA. Well, did we ever have an understanding? Well, no, now we have a misunderstanding. Were there expectations? And I applied that in my marriage, and me being a good father to my son and my daughter, like I need to have an understanding with them so they know, so we don't have a misunderstanding. So four agreements, have an understanding so there's not a misunderstanding. That goes towards marriage, being a good husband, good father, good wife. Love that book, by the way.
Yeah, and
great resource.
Yeah, and a great team leader. I talked about how important it is to have a team. One of the most toxic things that happen in teams is assumptions. That I assume that you would know that. I would, that's common sense. And have agreements, don't have assumptions.
Or you assume that you're a good communicator and your team tells you that you're not.
You're not.
Every year, kind of to the extreme ownership book, me and the team, we get together and we go around the room and we have to say what we each all think our best strength is, and then what our biggest weakness is, myself included. So my whole team in front of everybody is telling me what they think my biggest weakness is. Because I will rationalize, they just think I'm a bad communicator because this. But if the whole team is telling me, yeah, no, you suck at putting notes at the CRM, and you like don't tell us when you have a side conversation, and I'm like, okay.
Sounds like every loan officer.
yeah. But it's, how do you, I love doing that once a year, by the way, because you're told from your team, and it forces them to have, what does Jocko call it? It's healthy conflict. It allows you to have healthy conflict with your team and to be honest. And if you can be open and honest with your team, you build trust, myself included. So I would encourage you guys to do that. But I liked what you said when you listen. Do you listen to anything when you get into like a mental funk? I listen to something. It's not as cool as Dave, but is there anything like on your phone or your iPod or?
Yeah. I think I've had too much information, too many books, too much information to put into my head. So I get the information overload. Like I was reaching this last year, like, come on, Zig Ziglar, where you at, my man? Like, because before it was Zig, like, I just put on Zig Ziglar and his voice was like, okay, I'm good. You guys know Zig, your neighbors are the guy from the past. Nothing worked last year. And one day I just was in a funk, and I found Ben Newman. He's a mental toughness coach, and he talks about, another word for your why is, he says, is burn. He helps you connect to your burn inside. Yeah. And I think it just, he said something on one of his podcasts, how you do one thing is how you do everything. How you show up, how you do one thing for you is how you're showing up for your wife and for your kids and for your business and for your clients. And I'm like, okay, snap out of it, dude. Like, you got to snap out of this thing. Okay. Pity party's over. I love what Zig Ziglar used to say about pity parties. It's like, they're the worst parties. And no one wants to be there. And the ones that come don't bring presents, And I think that's the quote, something along those lines. And that helped me, man. That helped me snap out of that. But
have y'all seen that movie Tin Cup?
Mm-hmm.
Where like he's
Yeah.
and he's like in a funk, and he takes all the coins and all the stuff from one pocket to the other. It's so randomly when I get into funks, I don't know why, because I don't follow him a whole lot on Instagram. If this helps anybody, but it's Eric the Preacher.
Oh, for sure.
Dude, he fires me up, and he, and there's just sometimes where I'm in a mental funk, and I'm at the gym, and I'll just put on his Instagram and video after video, and he's like, "You're a lion," and he's like yelling at you, and I'm like, "I'm a lion, I could do this," So, anyways, if you're in
go live at the gym next time,
I definitely will. But
or the gazelle, the lion and the gazelle.
Yes, yeah.
That was me. I was actually going to pull this up, you guys, but to answer your question, I have this playlist in my phone called DK Prayer List. I've got my fishing list and my prayer list. And when I pop on any of these songs, it's
cool.
designed. I had to build this. I built this last year, but any of these songs come on and it'll oftentimes bring me to tears, or it'll just pull me out of the stinking thinking.
What do you call that playlist?
I call it a DK.
Share
I just
with
made
us.
it. It's a DK prayer list.
Stinking thinking list.
And I love that you have a fishing list and a prayer list.
Oh yeah, the fishing list is
What's in the fishing list?
Yeah.
man. Hunting, fishing, loving every
Every
day.
day.
Little Luke
Nitty-gritty.
Bryan, little nitty dirt band, Diamond Rio.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I ask a Deb question to follow up on what
Oh my
Dave said?
gosh.
Yeah, for sure.
It's for you, Dave.
Yeah.
You ready for this?
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see.
So he had asked about adversity, struggle, how you overcome that. And I didn't hear quite from you. If you were to say last year, what would you say was one of your biggest struggles that you overcame, or something? Because people look at you and you're like the mortgage coach. Like you're also the example I give to a lot of my clients
Teflon
of like,
Don.
do what Dave does with his Facebook group. If you would just create your own community, like your tribe of people. But I don't know if everyone knows the inside of you that helps you be who you are, which I love to death, obviously. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What was something
Get it,
that
girl.
you
I love
struggled
it.
with last year that we don't know about that you had to overcome?
You don't have to get like deep, but like
Or you could. It's
No
okay
pressure.
either way.
I know you're trying to get me to relive.
No,
the-
it can be last year. It doesn't have to be. Or if
Yeah.
you want to share something from your past, you can. But this is a way for people to know, like, who's Dave? Like, how did you become this
Well, that's
awesome
that's
guy?
obviously a much bolder question, but I think the thing that was a big struggle last year and still a struggle this year, and something that is just presence. I mean, even like this is a long form communication, and to just truly be present, and when you're talking, listen to you and not be thinking about other things is a constant struggle. That I have. And again, I am ADD. Like,
Do you know what Adderall
real deal.
is?
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
just
not
kidding.
taking it. I'm not taking it.
I'm just kidding.
When I was in grade school, they made me take Ritalin.
Yeah.
And I was the kind of kid where not only did I have to go up to the teacher and get my pill, I had to like prove that I took it, which by the way was not a very good experience. I don't think they do that to kids anymore.
No.
I hope not.
they
Yeah.
do that in the classroom.
Oh yeah, I was in third grade. There was me and another kid. We'd have to go up, and everybody knew it was going down, or at least we thought. But yeah, presence, and obviously for my family. Like I do think in business, when I'm interviewing someone, I'm present. I mean, it's pretty rare that when I'm doing something for our YouTube channel that, I mean, I might be multitasking because I'm, answering a question on Facebook, but I'm all about how to make that half hour or that hour pure gold, pure value, and where is the value, which is probably one of the reasons why I love them. It's good therapy. But yeah, I struggle with presence, when I'm with family members and not thinking about work or, not thinking about what I'm going to do next. And that's a constant struggle.
What about you, Todd?
I mean, I think we all struggle with that, right? I mean, I think that's the big challenge we have of being present. There's a great book out there. Forgot who wrote it, but it's called The Precious Present. And someone had given it to my dad, who gave it to me. I think it's Spencer Johnson, who's done a bunch of it's an easy book. You can read it like in an hour, but it's a good book to share with anyone who maybe struggles with that. And I think that's how we all are. I think on our call this morning with Jonathan Roach, he said that Jim Rohn had said, like, while we're at work, we're thinking about being at home. And while we're at home, we're thinking about being at work. And I think, you said something that resonated with me earlier about how you felt that you were providing for your family, right? I put work first and I wanted to provide. And it was funny for me when I got coaching, that was the biggest thing that helped me, had probably saved my marriage at the time, because I thought I was getting up, going in the office at 6. I was working hard. I came home at 5, had dinner with my wife, had dinner with the kids, read the kids' books, put them to bed. And then I worked late. I was studying. I was in Lone Toolbox and, doing these things. And I thought I was doing the right thing because I was providing for my family, but I wasn't communicating to my wife what I was doing and why I was doing it. And she didn't get the aha until she actually came to work with me. I just challenged her for 90 days. I just need some help. And rebuilding the business, financial crisis was crushing us. And she was a stay-at-home mom, and she was an attorney, so she could go back and make good money. And I'm like, come help me for a few days, please. And she's like, now I get it, right? If I'd given her that glimpse in and let her actually understand what I was doing, why I was working hard, and had her, share in with me on what the experience was. And so I would say, if you're a real estate agent or a loan officer, and whether you're married for 1 year, not married, or for me now it's 30, almost 32 years, is make sure you communicate what you're doing and why you're doing it, and get that buy-in. And so it reminded me of when rates dropped last year, and we had you on a mortgage coach call, and you said, well, I'm doing purchases during the day and I'm doing refinances at night, right? And it sounded to me, I took away from it that you had gotten buy-in at this point from your husband, that like your family knew you were doing it. And I think that was one of my other takeaways from COVID was, we were blessed in the mortgage business with this gift of rates and more business than we could do. But it put a lot of stress on us, right? We were in the fire. Like, you had a group, and we didn't, I think the mortgage coach group was kind of my family, where we all had people to talk to, but there's so many people who hadn't heard from us, our families hadn't heard from us. And we're going to be in a year that's going to be another hard year. So I would say, do what you're doing, Ryan. If you're, find a group like he's got, if you don't have a group to talk to and ask questions and, share with, make sure you're communicating with your family, get their buy-in on what you're doing and why. And then, you mentioned mental health earlier. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who struggle with mental health, and, reach out and get help. I mean, ask somebody, reach out to one of us. I mean, I'm certainly no expert on it, but ultimately then I think that there's so many people who need to hear from us and hear from you guys. And I think this struggle's great. I thought it was a great question, because I think people, right, we all see how great you guys are, and we all, strive to be like you, and to know that everything's not perfect is really helpful. But there's always all those takeaways we get. And it's just funny to me, every single time I get off a conversation where we're interviewing any of you, just notes after notes and action plans after action plans. And they're not always about the things that other people think. It's these little takeaways that, let me communicate with my family, because I think everyone's trying to do what you talked about, provide for them. And in the end, they also want to know that you're there for them and why you're doing it.
Yeah. And I think if you're a manager or regional manager or anything like that listening to this, even if it's your top producer, you need to check in on their mental health, not just on their production numbers, so that you don't feel like you're just a number. Like, you need to just check in and say, hey, how are you doing?
How are you? It's
how
easy
is your
question.
team doing? Yeah.
Because everybody needs that. Not just the 10 million, but the
Even the ones at
$200
the
million.
top,
Like,
yeah.
everybody needs that check.
Just because it's like they associate the financial, they're making so much money, they have to be so
Exactly.
happy. But in 2020, when I was like, I would pay for sleep right now. I have so much money and I cannot pay for sleep. I had my husband helping me with title orders and appraisal orders because we were so slammed. I mean, I need to hear from somebody in management or upper management that's like, hey, I know you're writing a lot of loans, but it ain't easy because you're doubled your production with the same crew. So what do you think's happening?
Yep.
Do you need something? Can I send you pizza?
Yep.
You could send me Skittles and I would, you know? So
I remember even when I was in your office and I was helping you pull in some credit apps, and I was like, gosh, it must be nice, because there's clients that I hear from, they're like, I would love to just get an app a day. And here she was getting like 20 apps a day. And so I just was like, wow, must be like the money must be great. And she's like, but is it? Because if I try to go on vacation or try to be at a birthday party, or it's a constant, you know, so you can have all the money in the world, but if you can't have the time, like that's where I actually heard a video, Dan, that you posted. I think it was 2020. It was in LinkedIn, where you had said you're not taking on every possible maybe refi or loan. Like you were protecting from putting yourself in the fire. I think it was 2020.
I protected my team.
Yeah.
We drew a number. We drew the line. It's 60 loans a month.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. I mean, could we have done 75? Could I have put up your guys' numbers? Possibly. Never worked more than 50 hours a week. And we never funded more than 65 loans a month.
That's
see,
what it was.
where we had to draw the line. And because for me, it wasn't about the money we were making or the number of loans that we could write. I felt a sense of responsibility. All of our past clients who were reaching out to us, who were wanting to capitalize, like that's where I couldn't sleep at night, because I'm like, this is life-changing savings for people.
Yeah.
I mean, it was that anxiety. So we drew the line that was like, if you were not a Nerd Club alum, I was not doing your refi.
Wow.
Because we
Two
couldn't.
great strategies from both.
There
of
was,
them.
when you entered the online application to fill out a refi, you had to have the code to complete the refi app, because I would not entertain a
That's
refi.
conviction, though. That's you guys. That's
amazing.
protecting people, and I love your question to ask people, "Are you okay?" But I think the biggest thing is that where I failed initially was I'd say, "Are you okay?" and people would say yes, and I didn't say, "Are you really okay?"
Yeah,
like really, like okay, like I, and that would be a thing. But I love it. You guys protected yourselves. You protected your team,
Teams to protect the team.
that's huge.
Or if you see producers retracting, that doesn't mean that you just leave them alone. Like if I'm not as vocal on the monthly calls that we do, or I'm not participating in the private company Facebook group, if you see your producers retracting, that's not a time to be like, oh, they're busy, I'm just going to let them be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the time to be like, hey, how's it going? Yeah. I know how production's going. Obviously, you can see the numbers, but like, how is it going for you? Better yet, how's your team doing? Because I'm now having to manage them and their stress levels and them being overworked, So that's just, Dan doesn't walk around with a sign on his head saying, yes, I'm doing this mortgage coach video for you guys today, but I just had a week and a day. But everybody idolizes Dan, and he'll show up. You'll never know it.
We had a conversation with Todd Duncan. I think it was like August. And, with all the people that he helps coach, it was very eye-opening that I had asked him a question of, sometimes it's a hollow victory that you can earn all of this money and like the Robin Williams, but still take, your life. And so he had said that just in 1 month, there was 2 suicides of top LOs in the business earning a lot of money, and 2 others that had already threatened suicide. So and I just share that because that's real. And
you never know what somebody's going through, because
and
they don't have the sign on their forehead.
Right. And sometimes people, you have to ask the question again and really take it deeper and just love on your people and really know
those
where
rings you wear. They need to be like, we need a
like
color
a mood
code.
It's a mood ring.
Yeah, you need like
How
a
you
legit.
Like
And they're
brown.
so smart. If it's like red, it's like, oof. Wouldn't you like that for your spouse? Like, okay, my spouse is mad.
I
at
call
me
that
right now.
the Brazilian steakhouse, the little, I'm like, if it's
I know
green-
when my spouse is bad at me.
I don't need a ring.
Yeah.
But that's real. I mean, that is legit, and it's real. And coming off of a year, even though all these people around you, even real estate agents, I had to tell my team, we had to have a serious conversation with the team. Like, guys, yes, these real estate agents are probably closing more deals than ever, but they are working their tails off right now. Like, we're not having to do what they're having to do on the weekends, and offer after offer and phone call after phone call. And so when they call in and they might ask a silly question or ask if they can close in 11 days, just know that I said, treat them like they're 9 months pregnant. They're a little emotional, but we have to just know that they're working their tails off, and we need to be grateful that they're doing everything that they're doing on nights and weekends and to get that client, because it is not easy to get an offer accepted right now. So we need to be excited, not like, ugh, another contract's coming in.
Yeah, because they probably wrote 30 or 40 offers, and that was they finally got one.
Yeah. So
Well, I think that goes back to one of the best leadership skills will always be empathy and being
Soft
able
skills, yeah.
to
No doubt.
Challenged last
Mhm.
couple of years.
And best sales skills.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think, especially in this world where the local referral based originator is more and more competing with, online lenders, be more human, listen better, connect better, use video, but empathy is the biggest competitive advantage.
I want to go back to what you're talking about. What'd you call it? Like tapping into your burn?
Yeah.
Is that,
Yeah,
is that what you call
connecting
it?
to your burn.
Connecting to your
Yeah.
burn. And so I want to connect to your guys' burn and like the fuel that powers you every day. Usually top producers will have like sayings or one-liners or phrases that mean a lot to you. And it's not just the phrase. It's something like, for me, it's like a rally cry. Usually I'll do one once a year. Like, team, this is what we're rallying around this year. Dave shared one with me, and I'm curious, like, if you guys will have one. I'll give you some time to think about it. My two, one's an old school one, which is you are repeatedly what you do. Excellence is not an act but a habit. Like, when I first heard it, like, I've never forgot about it. Excellence is a habit. Every day, get up, focus on it. And then new one that I kind of caught last couple of 2 years is nothing changes if nothing changes. Everybody wants to be a DK. Everybody wants to be a Denise, but they're not willing to change any of the habits to get there. Dave, you shared one last week with me that I love. Ownership. Authorship is ownership. Did I get that right?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Authorship.
It
is
meant a
ownership.
lot to me, especially with what you do and what you're going through with your business right now. Why does that mean so much to you?
Well, I just have always found that the things that I actually do are the things that I authored. I had a creative space in that. And any time that someone else has said, hey, this is a process, this is a standard, and I want you to do it, it doesn't usually work. And then as a leader, when there were goals that were created, when there's new experiences that drive success in a business, the more I've authored that with a team, so that it wasn't like, hey guys, start using Mortgage Coach. It makes sense, do it. But there's a team decision around it, so that they authored it, or they own it, or they authored it and now they own it. And we put that as part of, when it comes to learning how to use Mortgage Coach, is like, get clear on your why, get buy-in from your team. So I've noticed that the things, whenever I've changed a behavior, it's because I authored it. Was it because my wife said, hey, I want you to have this new behavior? Or someone on my team said, Dave, no, we came up with it together. It's powerful.
Todd, how about you? I know you've probably had a million over the years.
Yeah, it's funny. My new one, and it's funny because I saw it. We were sitting outside at a restaurant last week with my family, and it was on the marquee of the restaurant across the way. And so I literally stepped out to the street. They're like, "What are you doing, Dad?" And I took a picture of it, and it's on the cover of my Facebook group right now. It's to begin, begin.
Mm-hmm.
And I just feel like, again, my biggest struggles have been me not having the confidence to go forward and get something done. And I think, we've kind of talked about it a little bit here today. You just got to get started. You got to put one foot forward to get to the next step and to go. And I feel that there's just so many people who keep saying, do it, do it, do it. Like, and so perfect example is, Deborah always talks about, going live on Mondays. And so she texts it to Dave in a group text. So they're like, wouldn't it be great if Todd did this? And so I just took that as, all right, now I'm accountable to the two of them to do it. So, 1 week I've crushed it so far, but it's also that accountability piece. But to begin, I had to begin. It couldn't be perfect. I said, hey, any feedback? And I was kind of hoping she was going to be like, oh, that was great. She's like, boom, 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 boom. I'm like, all right, that was awesome. I needed that. And so I think that's it, to begin, because my belief is, my personal why is to help people reach their potential, whatever they believe it to be. And I find that seems to be what holds them back first. They kind of know what they should do, but they just don't do it.
You were talking about that in the green room, like, to begin in video marketing, just hit record, just start. And so many people get paralyzed by fear. How do you do 400 phone calls in a day? Start with the first one. You know what I mean? Go from there.
What was that movie with Will Smith, The Pursuit of Happiness, where he's the financial advisor? Yeah, he learned, I saved this many seconds by not putting the phone down and
By not eating or
not
drinking.
eating, drinking. But then he was like, instead of going from the bottom of the list, I just went to the top. So just efficiency. I don't have anything that's cool or one-liner, but in our office we have, and I learned this from the Mortgage Coach, I can't remember what the guy's name is, but it says, we help people build wealth through home ownership. And that's that sentence is what drives so much of what I do in the day when I don't want to get up, and I just know that I'm helping somebody build wealth through the vessel of either owning a home or even if it's just a conversation. So that's just, I mean, that is like engraved. It's on my Instagram profile. It's on my Facebook profile. It's written on the wall in my office. Like that short sentence is just my reminder of what I am doing this for.
Connects you to your burn, as Dan would say, right?
Yeah.
As Ben Newman would say.
Ben Newman would say.
Yeah, I swiped that from him.
I would say for mine, I'm obsessed with changing perspectives and narratives for people and with social media. So I would say if you change the way you look at things, then the things you look at change. And so it kind of goes back to the law of opposites and how sometimes your worst day can end up being your best day, and you'll have such gratitude for the struggle, and you wouldn't know what struggle is until you then come out on the other side. And that kind of hits on the last one that you had with, I always say hope. I like that word hope. And if you take the HOPE and you hang on, pain ends, you know that to be true. You wouldn't have happiness if you didn't have sadness. And it's just the law of opposites. So if you change the way you look at things, then, and that can be applied to business, personal life, anything, then the things you look at change.
So good.
Love that quote.
I know.
One of our clients was a counselor, and they were saying if you held a pebble and the pebble was on the ground and you look down at the ground, you could see the pebble and everything else around it because it's far enough away from you. But if you take that pebble up and you put it up to your eye, then all you see is that pebble. And so if you apply that to like problems in business, if you're holding the problem up here and you're micro focused on it, and that becomes all encompassing of like, oh, we can't do this, I can't do video, I can't have this, just take the pebble and move it down and remove the focus from how bad it might be and just put the pebble down. It just gives you perspective that you might just be holding it up too close, or you're what you're focusing on might be too much negative.
Well, the pebble today in Clubhouse was rates are going up.
Yeah.
And everybody was focusing on what refi they didn't have today because of rates. And I'm like, they kind of Tony threw to me, and I was like, guys, there's opportunity everywhere. I'm a part of a big company. You're a part of a big company. And with those big companies that do 40 and 50 billion, our market share is 1%. So that just tells me that there's opportunity everywhere. And so everybody's focused on, rates are high. No, there's opportunity everywhere.
Yeah.
Put the pebble down.
Yeah.
And go look for the opportunity.
But that is so real. Like that is what loan officers will do this year, is they will panic.
And they'll paralyze them. They'll stop working.
Totally will. And it's like, guys, just put the pebble down.
Oh, so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Put the pebble down. Rates are high. So what?
That'll be my saying, is put the pebble down.
And are they really high? Dan, I know you got a few too. I'm sure over the years.
Yeah, I think we talked about it earlier a little about how you do one thing is how you do all things. And that's really what helped me reconnect to my burn this last year was, I've got a 15-year-old daughter and a 13-year-old son. They got to witness kind of the fire that I went through and how I handled it. I felt like I handled it incredibly well, but dwelling and staying in that fire, I was staying in it too long. There was time to move on, right? And I wanted them to see how Dad would come out of this, right? Because they watch and they listen to everything we're doing, everything, and good or bad. I tell my wife that all the time. I'm like, let's just focus on more of the good things that they're getting from me instead of Jenny all the time going, they saw you or they heard you or they're. I'm like, oh, come on, man. I'll have to play it out. I mean, geez.
Put the pebble down, Jenny.
Put the pebble down. Yeah.
Put the pebble down.
I might use that at home.
Everybody's
put the
stealing
cookie
that
down.
now.
Yeah. Put the cookie down. You're holding the cookie too far.
Cookies too close.
Yeah. But I think that's big. And that's the one thing legacy wise that I'd love for my kids to get and take away and apply to their lives moving forward, is how you do one thing is how you do everything. How you throw your laundry on the floor and expect your mom and dad to pick it up and go clean it for you, or grab it and take it down to the dirty clothes until we teach you how to do laundry better than us and fold it and stuff. And so, and then I applied that into my personal life and my team. It's so applicable. It was just one thing where I was like, personally, it hit home, family, it hit home, work, it hit home. How you do one thing is how you do all things.
Maxwell helped me with this too last year. He's like, it's okay for you to share with your team, hey, this is what I'm working on right now.
Yeah.
Because a lot happens. They're like, oh, boss man's working on something in himself. Well, if he can, then I can. And so going back to being vulnerable and owning, like, this is what I'm working on right now. And so I really leaned into that last year, and it was really cool. Like, so many more conversations opened up at such a deep level. Like, hey, you said you're working on that. Like, talk to me about that. And then they would open up. So just kind of owning that struggle. And obviously you want to get through it, but hey, I'm a human. I'm working on something in myself right now too.
Well, I think what's really powerful is how long do you allow yourself to stay there? Mm-hmm. I remember it was maybe a year ago, and I was in my bathtub crying. Something bad had happened. I called Denise, which is sometimes a good accountability partner, sometimes not. She's the toughest coach, but she was like, all right. Yeah, she is really good at coaching me, and will say, okay, I'm giving you the weekend. Like, you're allowed the weekend, because she would call back in a couple hours. I was still in the bathtub crying. And she was like, all right, like, come on. Like,
it's time to get out of there.
Yeah, like, but I mean,
you're a little pruny by now, so you probably should get out.
I'm sure Dave has even told me a couple times just in the past year with the 4 agreements, don't take it personally. Don't. And I'm sometimes a softie. I'm a little sensitive sometimes. And so Denise would just, hardcore be like, all right, I'm giving you the weekend, and then I don't want to hear about it again. Like, you're not, like, let's go. And you need those mentors in your life that sometimes do give tough love to pull you out of, all right, dude, like, I'm tired of hearing about it. Put the pebble down. Like, come on, like, come meet me at the gym, or drink some water, or whatever nonsense. Whatever, eat a vegetable. I'm
Water.
like dipping my cookie, and she's like, can we, actually my thing was popsicles, those really cheap frozen color popsicles. I mean, I needed an intervention. I had like 8 a night.
Sugar? She's like, I always have a headache. I'm like, maybe because you don't drink water and you're like slurping sugar in that popsicle. She's like, do you think there's sugar in the popsicle? I'm like, yes.
No, but there's water in the popsicle.
That's what I said. That is exactly what I said. Because if H2O is water, you're mixing it with something else. It's no longer H2O.
But there's still water in it.
No.
Change the way you look at things.
Yes. You need to change your perspective.
That is dangerous.
It's water.
It is, even though going back to like your spouse and being, if I knew if I wanted Jason to be interested more in the mortgage stuff and have a better understanding, I had to change and be interested. And right now it's all this NFT stuff. He's really excited that.
Oh, is he really?
Oh, he is a NFT nerd.
Oh my goodness. How many do you have?
He has a lot, and he Top Shot, and like NFL just came out, and it is like speaking a whole nother
I try language. To understand it, but I can't. I'm working hard.
He was so excited this morning and telling me that the NFL's just dropped their NFTs, and so I'm acting. I shouldn't act. I should actually genuinely. But I'm like present. I put my.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know. It's okay. He won't. But he's here with me because he's like, I want to come with you and be part of your space. So I like put my phone down, and I'm like, looking him in the eye, listening how passionate he is about this NFL NFT shenanigans. I'm like, wow, that's great. So when do you find out tonight? So I'm like, mental note, ask him tonight. Did you get?
Oh, look at you.
Whatever. Yeah, because
she's good at that.
Note.
Look at you.
Yeah, I had to put it in my phone, but it's like you can't expect people to be interested in what you're doing or have understanding into what you're doing or what you're passionate about. Because yes, this is my job, but I am a nerd. I do like to I like this, and I like what I do, and I like to consume this kind of stuff, which doesn't make sense to anybody else, but it's the same thing with freaking NFTs. I don't understand it.
Or baseball.
I
can't tell you how many times Jordan would come home and be like, tell me all about baseball, or what'd you think of my game? I'm like, I don't know, but your ass and those pants were on point.
Oh my God.
So sorry. He would tell me all the stuff about the scheme, and like he would be like, did you get the clock?
Did you see the delay steal in the top of the 7th? And we rallied, and
no, the worst part.
No, but I saw your ass.
Is on point.
I will talk about our kids' baseball games. He's like, please don't. He's like, please don't say that. That was, I'm like, it was a pop ball or fly ball. He's like, okay. I'm like, okay.
That's so funny. Oh my goodness, guys. Apparently when we do this again, and we will, because so many people, I told you at the beginning, wanted to just be a fly on the wall. So if you're listening, we're probably going to rack and reload 2.0, and we'll allow people to kind of come in and be a part of it. I do have one more question. Before we get that, I want to thank you guys for your time, because guys, if you look at what these people make and you divide it by the hours, they have a high hourly rate, and they flew to be here to share and be vulnerable. So that means the world to me. I hope the audience found a lot of wisdom and gold nuggets. I did. If you look at Todd's notes, it's through the roof. Guys, they did this to give back to the community, and that's why I love them so much. So thank you guys. The crew's amazing. There's an amazing crew back there that are killing it. They're making us look good. Let's finish and wrap on some positivity because we ran out of time. What are you guys going to do? Like, what are you working on that excites you for 2022? We kind of just did a call with your group and shared that a little bit. So some of this will be fresh. I know you got some big stuff coming for 2022. I'm going to start with you. Like, what are you excited for 2022? Maybe somebody will listen and kind of take a version of it and make it their own.
I hope loan officers and real estate agents listening do take a version of it, make it their own. Financial literacy. It's something that Dave's got me fired up on over the last 2 or 3 years. There's a huge gap in our world right now, especially in the United States, relative to financial literacy. And so I'm just going to keep spreading the gospel relative to understanding money and how it works and budgeting. And we talked about this earlier, compounded interest and the rule of 72. If you take one thing away from today, anything that I took or anything I spoke about, just get a better idea of the power of compounded interest, not cliched, seriously. Yeah. Compounded interest, the rule of 72, money is going to double if you give it a job. And we need to be teaching this to people. We need to be teaching people how to be good stewards of it.
And you do, like, guys, like, maybe that sounds boring to you. For us, because we're like-minded people, it's not. But you said yesterday 30 some odd realtors come to like every lunch and learn, and it's packed the house, right?
And my money class is my number one lunch and learn that I teach for real estate agents. It's packed. They're brokers. Their managers aren't teaching them how to manage
brokers.
Yeah, they're broke.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They're not teaching them how to manage their money.
I'm a fan of Dan, and he
there you
posted
go.
That a while back.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm like, that's so good, man. So I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
Every book he posts, all those,
So simple, you guys.
Yep,
so
how to retire early if you don't see that at Dan Keller Mortgage. Find your monthly expenses, $300 a month times 12, 36,000 divided by 4%. I need 900 grand.
Boom.
It's easy.
So good.
That's cool.
Keep doing what you're doing, man.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. You're next. 2022. Let's finish positive. Good note. Exciting note.
Well, what I'm doing is I'm hosting content days for my realtors and some of the people on my team. And content days don't sound very sexy, but it gets super laser focused in things like if you're wanting to spread financial knowledge out to people, then how do we do that in the platforms that you're most comfortable with? Obviously, Instagram, TikTok, so Facebook, whatever your platform is, they have the knowledge. They just don't know how to get it out there. And if I can help them do that, then I'm making a bigger impact. And so every Tuesday and Thursday, I'm disciplined on having either real estate agents or people in my own office. There's a couple of LOAs I have that they're dipping their toes in the water about being loan officers. And it was really fun on Christmas. We did it in front of a Christmas tree, and they shared why they're thankful for all the clients that they helped in 2021. They were uncomfortable. They were on camera. They had to speak to the camera. They're wearing a little Santa hat and getting them a little bit out of their comfort zone, which is what I'm doing with real estate agents. But I'm having a lot of fun helping people do what I've been doing on social media, but doing it for them and being their accountability partner and helping them get their message out to everybody else, which just, means more people are getting good content. So
that sounds like fun. That doesn't sound like fun. Work. Yeah.
It's not. Yeah. But my days are a lot more purposeful. My Mondays are set. My Tuesdays and Thursdays are set. And I'm not going to waver from those because it is my mission in 2022. So
yeah.
We call that brand leadership, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh.
We use the word discipline, right? Most people, again, they say they want to do something, but they're just truly not disciplined. They're not intentional about doing it. So you just set a standard for yourself that you're going to do that and you get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Well, brand leader, I mean, after I met you at Amplify, and since then, I don't know how long it's been. It seems like 10 years because of COVID, but maybe 2 years. Yeah. People ask a lot when we travel about personal branding. And number one, in my opinion, personal branding in all of the industry is the mortgage nerd. So, Todd?
I'm really passionate about content this year, really helping. My focus was going to be new loan officers and new realtors, anyone that's really struggling. But I realized, especially on the loan officer side, it's not necessarily new. It's actually the same content is going to apply to loan officers who have been doing it for 2, 5, 10, 25 years and repeating the same business over again. It's a transition year in the market. It's going to be a hard year. And so I'm going to be putting out a lot of content. I'm going to relaunch my group coaching I called it for new loan officers, but it's really going to be for anyone who's looking to scale from a refi biz to a realtor-based, database business. And I'm just super passionate about that. I mean, we did the TCA a day and the CMA a day challenge last year. And I just saw that people who were committed to their craft would grow. And I feel like, a low cost way for someone who is worried about this year to be able to launch is what needs to be out there. I mean, there's lots of great coaching programs for people making, hundreds of thousands of dollars. There's not many coaching programs out there for someone who's closing 2 or 3 loans a month and is worried about it. And so very excited about that. A lot of free content, and then going to relaunch the coaching program I did before. And I'm just fired up.
Yeah, I appreciate
Really
you giving back. You guys have given back to the community for a long time, and it's so good. Content though for 2022.
Content is it, and then I got my accountability partners right over here,
Same.
so it's gonna
Look it over.
it's gonna
She helps
happen.
tell me the content, so it makes it easy.
Well, and I've hired Plug and Play. They do our modern mortgage page, they do our modern real estate page, and they do my Win by Noon page. But then I suck. I'm not doing anything with it, right? So again, it's one thing if you put out the content, but then you also have to actually do something with the content. So I'm
The most human brand wins.
Thank you for reminding me that. Yes.
I'm like, you got to be the human.
Yeah,
Plug and Play is getting big. Like we were talking about Shayla Gifford earlier, our divisional, all tapping into
where
that.
it's at.
Cindy
It's where it's at.
Griffin.
It's good.
It's
It's
the-
really good.
Get it.
I mean, not to toot her, but it's like, it's the only, I've tried to outsource marketing. It's the only firm that truly understands mortgage and finance.
It's a good point, actually. It's different.
Because
Mortgage
you can
marketing.
outsource it, and you should outsource a piece of it. I don't believe you can outsource all of it. I still do reels because people still want to know Todd and people still want to see Dan. But I know that there's the content that I get to help me stay, okay, do this TCA every Tuesday, and that accountability is definitely helpful. But I've tried outsourcing, and you'll get the static post, but they don't understand how to read a TCA. I can just forward a TCA and then she makes it look pretty. You know what I mean? So I definitely
connection. There's an EQ side of it to bring the story alive with. You have to know the language, and then there's compliance that makes it very difficult with what we do. But
for the loan officers listening, I don't want them to think that I'm doing all of the social media and the graphics and putting the logos on it and consuming all the data and the research. And no, I've outsourced that to Plug and Play. Like, I don't do all of that. And I think if you're a loan officer that's trying to grow your business and that's not your skill set, you do have to acknowledge what things do you need to delegate. Are you spending so much time trying to put a graphic together to then post on social media? Is that the highest, best use of your time? Maybe you should delegate that. And then you can focus on other things to grow your business. So I just say that sometimes people think I do all of that myself. I don't. I outsource it, and I outsource it to Plug and Play because they understand mortgage. So anyways, what's your thing? What's your 2021?
So I have been working on a children's book that I'm going to finish in 2022 that is about financial literacy.
You said it. So now we all
It's
are
timestamp
holding-
now.
Yeah.
I'm writing it down so I can hold you
It's,
accountable when you ask me
it's
about
meant-
my live
wants
on
to
Mondays.
try.
I'm asking you how many
Accountability
pages
goes
you
both
wrote.
ways.
Yeah.
Yep.
But it's meant for a way that the loan officers can buy in bulk, where it'll be branded for them. Like, it can have all their information on the back cover, and
That's cool.
but it's a tool that they can use as a gift for closing or to families with kids,
Really
where
cool.
it bridges the gap for, obviously I'm a big family person and kids and education, but the parents hopefully either reading the book to the child or doing the activity book with the child, then everybody learns.
Wow.
But it's branded for the LO to be the rock star, and I just love
Dang,
teaching
that's
and
awesome.
hopefully changing the
Love
world.
that.
I'm
one
excited
day.
to see
Yeah.
that.
There's a little
Yeah.
draft in there too that's like, if you're moving. And so I just think how cool if you're relocating, because we have a bunch of people relocating to Texas, like helping the family deal with, okay, you're relocating, and it's going to be really cool. So you better get it done.
And
'cause
the
it's
loan
cool.
officer is going to be wearing a shirt that has mortgage coach. Just so you know, there'll be a
Oh,
TCA in
little
there.
MC
Don't
on
you
there.
worry.
Little
We'll make
MC.
sure.
Well, we've been trying to get them young, like when they first get in the
Yeah.
business, but it looks like we're going to start building mortgage coaches even
Yeah.
younger. I
So
love the
Gary
idea.
Vee did. He
I
started
love the
that.
idea. Yeah. So I am never been more clear that real estate is the gateway to health and success, to wealth. I love your vision. Never been more clear that the true mortgage advisor, can be the most valuable advisor that a family ever has. Because let's face it, most families don't have so much assets that they even have enough assets to need a financial planner. 90% of families, they need a liability manager. They need a debt manager. They need a mortgage coach. So my year is going to be really dedicated to helping turn loan officers into the captain of the wealth team. Probably the one nuance that's a little bit different, and I'm glad to hear that you're going to pull the trigger on the children's book, is I do think the talent that we have in this mortgage coach community, we have the best creators, we have the best advisors. And so I'm really going to be pushing our community to go back and give back to high school students, to college students. So if you're a mortgage coach and a realtor, and do it not by yourself, like
Sure.
as the captain of the wealth team. I did an interview with Mike Garrett. He's one of the
He's a movement guy, right?
yeah, he's a movement guy, $100 million producer. And I started the interview just getting best practices in his conversion, and he caught me off guard, like halfway through it. He's like, one of the things he's doing is he's going out to high school students. He's partnering with a CPA, a financial planner, a realtor, and every week they're going out and educating. And I just thought, like, man, if we could get every loan officer to like partner with a realtor, partner with a CPA, partner with a financial planner, I think our industry could really put a dent in the fiscal literacy crisis in America. So I think mortgage coach could have a role in that. I think our community could really make a massive change in every city in America. So that's going to be a big push of mine.
Love it. Guys,
Giving us yours or no? You're
for
closing us
me?
down. Come on.
Yeah, I shared a little bit on your call, been real focused, and my theme kind of this year, Casey talks a lot about, is healthy things grow. And they don't tread water, they grow. Healthy things grow. And so helping originators continue to grow and scale their business, go through the team challenges of building a team, making sure that they're good. How do I pay the team? Growing different markets, growing different branches, growing different states. Healthy things grow, and that's a lot of work, and getting real clear on the vision. For me, healthy things grow. And that means myself continuing to challenge myself to be a better father, a better husband, a better leader. And so I have to look at myself and go, Ryan, healthy things grow. So it's okay that you're in the fire. Hopefully there's a better version, better father on the other end of that, better leader on the other end of that. So I'm going to continue to focus on that this year. Healthy things grow for me. Yeah. Guys, I can't thank you enough. Like, I learned so much. And if you're listening, the best compliment you can do is to share and forward that to everybody. Tony, if you're listening, that needs everybody in New American Funding needs to get a copy of this. Casey, if you're listening, everybody at Movement, like, just forward it to the whole entire company, because these guys spent a lot of time and money to come here and be vulnerable and share everything. So guys, share it. If you know them personally, send a thank you to them, because again, they took time away from their families to be here and fly. It means the world to me. Thank you so much. You guys killed it.